If you can perform on bad days, I think that's what it takes to build something over time. The only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, is to do nothing, is to be nothing. Where you really have a superpower is if comparison is challenging you to be better. Just know that you aspiring to start a YouTube channel or you aspiring to build an online business is gonna induce more pressure.
I want a name of somebody that you are jealous of on YouTube. Mel here from the Think Media team. I'm excited to get into an interview with Sean Cannell, and we are going to get into some juicy questions today because we've got some good ones in here, Sean. I'm excited to do this interview with you because I think I have a unique perspective from knowing you for the last, really what's just 5 years. As we know in small business, it's like dog years. It feels like it's like 20 years. I feel like we've been through a lot. So let's just get right into it.
I'm fired up.
All right. First question. People often see the success, but not the struggle. Can you share a moment in your early YouTube days where you thought, this just isn't for me?
Man, there's been a lot of struggles over the years. I mean, I started YouTube in 2007 for my local church, started personally posting kind of on the side in 2010, and started to just post on multiple channels. I had a channel called Think International, had a business channel, Clear Vision Media, had my Sean Cannell channel. And there was many times and many uploads where I would maybe feel what you'd call a bright spot. I'd get like 5,000 views. I'd get 3,300 views, which is pretty significant. But then I would look, eventually I got monetized and I realized YouTube paid me $3.46 for those views. And my heart sunk because I felt like the gap between the goal of going full time and where I was so far. So many times over the years where I would feel like this incremental progress, I feel like sometimes on YouTube, you feel like you make 5 steps forward and then you take like 6 steps back in terms of going through slumps and seasons. But really, I was just committed to the long haul of YouTube. And to be honest, some of the slow growth was because I was just doing it as a side hustle. Like I had a full-time job, was focusing on family and other things and just doing YouTube when I could. So even though these setbacks, I wish the growth was faster, even though I wish the growth happened more rapidly, I was just committed to it macro. Like I'm just going to keep uploading videos as long as it takes as my side thing while I'm doing my main thing. And to be clear, that was 2010 to about 2016. 2015 was kind of the transition year. So it was about 5 years of just chipping away at the side hustle. And I hoped I would have got viral and been like rescued. But it wasn't until I got like focused, disciplined, and really went all in that things began to speed up. So I was just chipping away at things on the side.
So with that story of you saying that you really did have that mindset of just being persistent throughout, maybe there wasn't a moment when you thought you actually would quit, but what were some of the most difficult moments in that journey when it really tested you?
For me, the difficult moments were actually life moments more than YouTube moments. And so certainly in 2007, I started posting for the church. In 2009, I started my channel called Clear Vision Media, which was just a portfolio of videos for my video production business. Wasn't really a channel. I still hoped it was growing. I thought it was a channel, but it wasn't really a channel that was value-based. It was just a portfolio. And that was the year that my wife, Sonia, almost died, and that the housing crisis was happening and we were losing our home. And so those external circumstances applied so much pressure that it did make it incredibly difficult to work on my side hustle or to work on anything. Sometimes you just want to shut down, retreat. And so fast forward, whether it was drama at work, drama in marriage, hard seasons. There was seasons where I think every relationship has challenges and maybe fights. We've been through cycles where we'd get into counseling and marriage counseling, which I'm a huge fan of. And I think it's a very powerful thing that shouldn't be taboo. You know, I think counseling is something that is, it's been incredibly helpful to us. And so some of the most challenging times would be, I would schedule a live stream at 10 a.m. and I would fight all morning with Sonia and then still have that live stream. Some of the most challenging moments would be being up late with marriage conflict, processing an issue, and then having a big shoot day the next morning. And then similarly would be conflict that could happen relationally once we got into the Think Media season, building the business. There's just a lot of pressure. And I think the takeaway principle is trying to learn how to let business be business and to show up and deliver regardless of your emotions. We have to be a little bit careful of that, because if you're just burying your emotions and never processing them, but there's just something about whether you feel like it or not, turning on the camera and shooting the video, there's something about knowing how to alter your state in a healthy way, knowing that, all right, I need to go on a walk, get some fresh air, let my anger cool down, pray about it, fire off a text, apologize, resolve the issue as much as possible for this moment, and then get on camera and deliver. And then I think the other biggest one, though, would be the chronic pain piece. At 32, I'm about to turn 40. I really started to notice I had some pretty extreme pain in my wrists, fingers, forearms. That is essentially RSI, repetitive strain injury, repetitive stress injury. Very common for computer programmers and gamers. And I've been editing video so intensely from 20 to 32 that without good ergonomics or good weight training or strength training, that I developed this consistent pain. And it's been something I've still been wrestling with it. Thank God that today things are better and I'm improving. But due to the nature of that exact time, interestingly enough, being the transition time into entrepreneurship, being a solopreneur at first, doing YouTube full time, now building Think Media, which is about 7 years old. That like the entire time of building Think Media and building YouTube has been chronic pain like the whole time. So it's kind of been this tension to manage. And I don't, on the one hand, I think like maybe I'm not a great example because I don't know what I would have done, but like I do know that some people who do find kind of a carpal tunnel RSI thing, they will take like L&I and be off work for 6 months or 12 months or be unemployed and be rehabbing in some way. I've never done that. And it's maybe speaks to my personality, whereas maybe feeling the pressure on my shoulders to provide for my family, fight, build the company. There's also though, and I admittedly today I have no excuse because there is some margin, there's an incredible team and there's money in the bank. And as a result, I also am like doing physical therapy. And so, but I've always been like working, processing that. I never went to the extreme of just checking out and working on only that, but I've just continued to build. And the result is that there's been good days and bad days, but there's been times where I will work on my computer as much as I can for the hours in the morning. And that by 2 p.m, at our Seattle place, I would get into bed, rub my arms, slather them up with CBD menthol on my elbows, both forearms and hands, take Advil or Tylenol and sit there and just think about the pain being at level 7, 8, or 9 and being wondering like, man, is this going to keep getting worse? Am I doing damage as I continue to work with this? And I've studied this extensively. So without going too deep into the whole thing, no doubt about it, trying to build something with chronic pain, it's a lot easier without. Trying to build something with not feeling your best. But I think the drive, the mission, my personality, my parents' work ethic of like kind of just suck it up, grin and bear it. My wife, who's incredibly inspiring, who's also co-founder of the company and deals with different chronic pain throughout the years. And I think it's a very sensitive subject because I would never want to encourage somebody to push themselves too hard. But I look back really with no regrets other than I wish I would have worked out in my 30s and exercised more and done preventative measures to maintain my posture and muscles and health and the rounded shoulders and neck and strength training and all that kind of stuff. But fast forward to today, it kind of is what it is. So I've gone long on that question, but I think that one of the hardest things about being consistent with your online business and your side hustle is that life's going to happen. Family members get sick, drama comes your way, sickness comes your way, health comes your way. And perhaps the difference of those who break through and build something and those who don't is those that just essentially crumble under the heavy pressure of life. I want to say that with empathy, but if you can develop the mental toughness and the fortitude to push through when you want to quit, if you can perform on bad days, I think that's what it takes to build something over time. Because there's no way you're ever going to only have a series of good days. Where it's when times, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I think success is really made in those tough times, and some of the things I've learned.
Absolutely. And I think from the perspective of somebody working with you, we didn't have any idea how much pain you were going through or all the different struggles that you went through during that time. You were very good at segmenting those things off and just showing up for work and showing up your best. Even coming on camera, we wouldn't even know some days that you're having, that you're in pain, that you're having a hard day. So I do think that there's something particular about your personality that does set you apart. But as you look back, I know you mentioned one thing you would have liked to change, but for so many of our audience members, they come to us with these questions. How do I handle chronic pain? How do I handle spouses that don't support me? Kids, there's all these obstacles. So you gave a couple of recommendations for people, but what would you go back and change other than just working out? What would you go back and change to help people who are in that situation now?
Yeah, well, let's come back to the spouses one. I think let's isolate the chronic pain one. I think that I could have maybe worked a little bit less, but honestly, I don't think that would have been the change. I think it would have been, for the level of output I wanted to do, it would be adding in strength training. That's what I would have changed in my 20s. Now that I'm working with some physical therapists, I'm blessed to be surrounded by our students that are health experts like a Benazati or Justin from Own It, and these different people who also have YouTube channels. So I'm so blessed that I've got really high quality information coming my way. And I love what I do. So I actually do enjoy being in front of a computer, being at a desk or a standing desk, typing, Slack, meetings, live streams, hustling, building the channel, building the business. I enjoy that. And what I've been told is that if I want to be there for, let's call it an 8-hour day, but it could be 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 8, some days 10, 12, whatever it takes, that I just need a commensurate amount of time in the gym. And so it's kind of like, if you're going to be pushing yourself and expecting high performance out of your body, out of your mind, then you need high performance habits to support that. In my 20s, I've always generally ate healthy, but I'm about to contradict that because I remember every morning going to Bible college, I'd get the apple pie from 7-Eleven, where the list of ingredients was like 700 things long: preservatives, additives, processed food, genetically modified organisms. And I ate that every day for breakfast. And then I remember I was drinking Naked. I don't even know if they make it anymore. I think it went out of business. It was owned by Coke, which was green juice with 58 grams of sugar and not actually green juice. So fast forward to today, I was like steering towards health, but now I won't even really touch Mighty Greens, which is pretty good from Suja, but it's still 38 grams. I need that Uber Greens, which is gnarly. So it's like in my 20s, I wasn't really operating in high performance nutrition. I wasn't operating high performance in oxygen, exercise, walking. And I was volunteering, helping build a church, which I'm grateful for, everything I invested there. I was fighting to wait tables in the early days and support my family. And I was putting in a ton of work. The missing piece would have been making time to just allow my muscles and posture and stretching and yoga and whatever. So I think that's a big one. And I think that, yes, pulling back to create enough margin for that. However, I could have achieved that. And now that's what I'm trying to flip, is to create enough margin. And again, if I'm going to be in front of a desk 6 or 8 hours a day, that I need to be doing strength training every day or, 5-6 days a week. So that's some of the things that I would change there. I also, as we pivot into the marriage side and relationship and spouse side, Sonia is an amazing woman, and we recently started counseling again, and it was kind of funny. And she just goes, she's telling Letitia, she goes, and it admittedly is kind of hard being married to Sean because he is type A and really driven, and he has a lot of vision. And sometimes I'm feeling just overwhelmed with what's on our plate now. And he's talking about 3 months, 6 months, 12 years, a year, 12 years from now, he's talking about this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm just trying to, kind of survive what it is today. And so I think a lesson I could learn is also just pacing myself, having more emotional awareness and empathy for her and everybody around me on the rise. And these days I preach patience in terms of like slow and steady wins. YouTube's a marathon and not a sprint. I think I could look back and have even just a little bit more patience. We're about to approach my 40th birthday at the time of recording this. Think Media is 7 years old. We might do 7 or 8 million top line revenue right now. We're like 25 W-2s. We'll probably be 30 soon. Add up all the contractors and vendors and other people that are in the orbit. It's like 35, 40 people these days. And honestly, it's like we're further than I ever could have imagined. And here becomes the question. What if it actually took, though, what if it wasn't until I was 45 that we were where we are right now? These are like impossible things to really measure because you are fighting for survival and you're fighting to like capture gaps in the market in certain timings. You want to strike while the iron is hot. We look at what's happening in the creator economy. So it's a whole tension to be managed. But for the thought exercise, let's just say a year. If I stretched out an additional year of leisure and breaks and rest, 52 weeks, and peppered 52 weeks, I'll be married 20 years in 2 years to Sonia. Over the last 18 years, if I would have given more time, 52 weeks is crazy. That's a couple more vacations, a little bit more rest for my own health, for our relationship, to slow down the process. I would, if I could change it, I would have gone a little bit slower, and maybe we aren't as far as we are now. So what would I go back and change spouse-wise? Or people also talk about working with your partner. Man, it's funny. We've been married 18 years, and I think that this sounds cliche, but it's profound. And that is communication and relationships is everything. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like we're back in kindergarten now as we had this counselor from years ago and we're meeting with her again. And like, she's telling us stuff like, she's like, so, like Sean, like you have to like communicate with your wife. And she's also like, Sonia, like you need to like communicate with Sean. And so it's like, we think we are communicating, but really speaking in such a way that your spouse understands. They oftentimes say like men speak blue, women speak pink. Being patient to make sure that things are understood, carving out time to communicate, and then communicating about details. And what we realize, the pressure in the current moment that I think is a big takeaway for the podcast is that when you start if you start aspiring for more, you need to also upgrade your lifestyle and your tool sets and your habits and your routines to be able to handle more. So a lot of people listening to this are aspiring for more. They want to start a side hustle and earn extra money. They do already have kids that they want to raise well, and one spouse is working and they want to earn some extra money and maybe retire that spouse. They've got medical bills, they've got these different things, and they're trying to build an online business, make money online. That's an aspiring for more. You're now going to take on pressure that normal people wouldn't. No one's right or wrong. If somebody loves their career and is happy and wants to get off work and have leisure and relax and check out at 5 p.m., get home and cook and eat dinner and celebrate, you absolutely should do that. Just know though that the path of entrepreneurship and building the side hustle on your way there is like after your day job. Then it's like get home, spend 5 minutes connecting, start chipping away at the side hustle, still put the kids down, stay up even later, do whatever it takes. That's increased pressure. And as increased pressure goes up, it's harder to communicate. So what Sonia and I are now feeling is like, we've noticed even just the complexity of our life. It's an incredible blessing, but it actually brings hardship. And we try to live in 2 states. We're so blessed that we have nannies, but it's like managing, and Sonia manages all these details. And then it's like, we got the business, we're hiring new people. And then we've got different functions and things we're putting on the calendar. And we're 2 small town kids, college dropouts, trying to figure out how to run a company. And every year we've never been there before, and we never will. We don't know what it's like to run the company at this level of sophistication and whatnot. So we're trying to also focus on learning faster than we've ever been before, hiring coaches and mentors. Good thing we're in counseling, working on, getting back in. And so all of that is that the need of communication is what worked yesterday when the pace was 60 miles per hour. Now it's 100 miles per hour, or there's just more complexity added in. We need a greater set of tools, and we need that business versus personal life versus the aspiration of the YouTube channel versus what are you going through versus how are our personal relationships, all these different things. So trying to summarize in a valuable sense for the listener is like, just know that you aspiring to start a YouTube channel or you aspiring to build an online business is going to induce more pressure. Open up channels of communication, process things with your partner, be patient if they don't fully understand and see the same vision that you see. Invest if possible, invest in coaching and mentoring. A lot of times we don't hire a counselor until there's a problem, when ultimately not all amateurs have coaches, but all professionals do. And Tiger, when he's playing golf, he's got coaches when he's winning. So even if you don't feel like there's a need, it's always helpful to invest in clear communication, clear vision, truly getting buy-in from the other person, whatever it takes. That could be really helpful. And there's been seasons of pain that I've caused Sonia, or just seasons of frustration in our marriage that could have been solved by relationships, counseling, coaching, me slowing down a little bit, and just making sure our communication was tip-top.
And it's invaluable to say, from looking back at a decade now in this industry as an entrepreneur, that one of your main takeaways is have a little bit more grace and time for yourself. Like you said, if it had taken you one more year longer to get to where you are today, it would have been worth it. So that takeaway, I think, is so incredible, because most people aren't saying that there today, that would have been worth the investment in your relationship and in your health. All right, Sean, this is about the critics and the trolls here. What was the most hurtful comment you've ever received, and how did it affect your content or your approach to YouTube?
So one of the funniest comments, and we just got a second one, was somebody left a comment and they said, "Why does this man have the face of a boy, but the hair of an old man?" And someone just on an Instagram Q&A just asked, "How did your hair become so gray when you're so young?" So, this is the kind of encouragement that you get by opening up the comment section on YouTube. What's funny was I was like, I don't know, how do I answer that? I was like, maybe you think I look younger, because sometimes people go, "Dang, you look kind of young." And I'm like, "Well, I'm 40. And they're like, "Oh, you're 40? And it's like, "Oh, the gray revealed it." So honestly, though, I find those humorous. Sometimes the most hurtful comments are the ones that have some truth in them. And I learned a quote from Billy Graham that always stuck with me. And he said, if you can get to a place where you actually benefit and learn from your critics, it's to your advantage. Because the outrageous, negative or weird or toxic comments that have no basis in reality, those aren't the ones that get under our skin. It's the comments that maybe are still unfair, mean, super rude, not something anyone would ever say to someone's face, but have some level of truth in it. And I know a lot of listeners are maybe afraid if someone calls out their teeth or calls out something that's true about the way they look, or that points out something in the way you communicated. And it's easy for me to take those things personally. I mean, I'll take things personally. We just uploaded a clip from the Seattle studio where I just switch while I'm going through Coffee with Cannell. And there was like massive feedback about like these camera angle switches is horrible. This really breaks my attention. And one person was like, "I can't even trust somebody who switches their camera this much," or something, So I don't know. So I think that negative comments and troll, they affect me probably a lot more than people realize, but it's been one of the skill sets also that just comes with the territory that you have to grow. So I've intentionally tried to grow, understanding the principle that you got to have thick skin, but keep a soft heart, to try to listen to feedback, especially if someone says this felt inauthentic, or I felt like you misrepresented this or whatever. I think actually the person who closes their ears too much to the audience's feedback ultimately is going to lose on YouTube. And then, of course, you get into the world of like, just by the sheer nature that we sell an online course, or that we could be in the internet marketing associated with that world, more than associated, it'd just be like, we obviously market on the internet. A lot of times people call you a scam, or they'll call you this or that. And I'm incredibly empathetic to those things. And it makes me think about being thoughtful about just messaging and communication. I have learned though, I can't remember who it was, but it was actually like Warren Buffett. It was Charlie Munger who said, if you don't have 5 to 10% of people complaining that your prices are too high or that you're charging too much or that that ultimately you're not charging enough, that you should be pushing your product, your service. And so there's a lot of mindset work to understand, to, of course, build your product to actually be excellent. In this case, we're talking about a product that's an online course, or write a book. I mean, same thing. Like, it's funny that somebody could complain about a book that costs $4.99 on Kindle or $10 on Amazon that took years to write, that's full of gold and wisdom. And somebody could say, this was a total ripoff. And of course, you can return it. You can return the Kindle, return the Amazon, Audible. So it's kind of being okay with that like there's going to be a percentage of people. And as Aristotle said, the only way to avoid criticism is to say nothing, is to do nothing, is to be nothing. And so I count it a privilege and a sign that I'm doing something right when I get negative comments, trolls, etc. And I try to keep a soft heart though. I don't want to just say, oh, it's the haters and they don't know. I want to keep a vantage point of love for everybody there, empathy for everybody there. And I want to spot trends. I want to be discerning enough. I think this is important math. So, because there's two equations. My friend John Acuff did haters math. 99 positive comments plus 1 negative comment equals 1 negative comment. The only thing that you think about is the negative comment. I'm thinking about it in the shower. Man, what do I really look that old? Like, was that, or am I a scam? Like, you start like cycling on that thought. Well, the reverse, I guess it's kind of the same equation, but the reverse equation is we at Think Media have created the formula of like, let's do the math. I get really emotional about a video. Is the video succeeding or performing? I'll read 1 or 2 negative comments and I'll be like, people hate it. I think it's important to take a step back and actually think about the like to dislike ratio, which isn't necessarily shown public. They were hiding dislikes or whatever, but you can see the percentage in your YouTube studio. And in the YouTube studio, we'll see something like 96%, which is low for us, is how many people like the video. A lot of times it's 97, 98 and a half. So I didn't do super great in high school. It really wasn't for me. I think I had an aptitude for learning, but I wanted to learn practical world skills and entrepreneurship and not necessarily the traditional education system. So I want to say I maybe averaged a 3.0, 2.9 or 3.2 GPA. And I remember on tests, if I got an 86 B, if I got a B plus, even an A minus, that was amazing. 97% is such an insane approval rating, with most of those people hitting the like button actually are enjoying the content, getting value, and they're being silent. A lot of times the most vocal people on the internet are the most hurt, toxic, cynical, critical. And you got to ask the question, how is it that they even have time to type and give that response? Busy, productive, ambitious, enterprising individuals are building. They're watching, learning, and taking action, and they're not necessarily going to get involved in that level. That's not to say that someone shouldn't leave a negative comment, and that's true about all people, but it is to say that I've got to look at the math. And I still get caught up in my emotions, because I'll get 1 negative comment on the podcast and I'll spin off even a title crew in Slack or something with, Kyle and Steph. And I'll be like, something's wrong with this video. I think we missed it. Did we say it wrong? Should we use this different word in the title? And it's also nice. I realize it shows how irrational I am. I'll get like Nolan just being like, I think the title's fine. Why are people offended? And here's my thing. I read 1 comment, 500 likes positive, 10 likes negative, 25 positive comments, 1 comment pointing something out. If I was more objective, as I'm trying to be here, as we evaluate the emotions I get caught up in, it's not really a big deal. Like, that's all tracking mathematically as it should be, Yet I think we sometimes can overemphasize the negative comment. So I think there's something about doing the math. And the long road around the mountain to pull the principle out is if the video had a 60% like to dislike ratio, or there's a crazy theme of a lot of people. And sometimes I've seen this in a couple episodes. They've been like, I love your stuff. I normally love what you're doing. I would love Think Media Podcast, love the team. This episode felt off. I think we need to be open to that. And I think we're in a really dangerous place if those types of feedback we close our heart to. Now ego's getting a little too big, pride's getting a little too big. That's a little bit more rare. And so I think it's look at the big data. The data is there to give you feedback, and we should be listening to that. It's going to make us better content creators.
Who do you compare yourself to?
I'd like to say that I compare myself to my yesterday's previous best, which I do think is true. I'm guilty though of, I think, falling into comparison in all directions. One thing that's interesting is, I could probably be really insecure that I'm not a absolutely ripped, gigantic alpha male muscle guy, which maybe is how people are wired or whatever. I'm pumped to get into shape, and it's a longer road than I thought, but I think I'll be, Brad Pitt, Fight Club ripped, which is also the aspiration is a health aspiration more than a physique, vanity aspiration. But I'm not trying to say I'm a saint. That's cool too as a byproduct. So there's like maybe there's certain categories. What I'm getting at is there's certain categories where like I don't compare myself. So I'm not like insecure around athletes, around bodybuilders, maybe because that's not my domain. I think where I get a little sensitive is just people in my domain. So it could be other YouTuber peers in niches or adjacent niches that are, their channel's growing faster, they're getting more views. I think it's other business owners. I would say though that what has helped me, and as a theme, has been I do enjoy putting myself in situations where I'm the dumbest person in the room and I'm the least successful in the room. This actually might have been one of the keys to whatever success I've accomplished. A lot of people get jealous, insecure. They avoid people that are more successful. They talk behind their back. They tear them down. They perhaps look for the weaknesses or flaws in those individuals and articulate and talk about those and highlight those, which is a losing strategy. There's just something that is so awesome about getting around somebody that's more successful. And here's the key, and honoring that person, having, I think, the mentality and the heart to respect greatness, and then also to take the student mentality to say, this is an opportunity to learn. So that's kind of how I've tried to be positioned, where I remember Alex and Layla Hermosi DM me and sent me a video laughing because on stage when they spoke at our event, I was like, we've been out here on Think Media building this thing at the time for 6 years and got to like about $6 million a year. And then Alex Hermosi shows up on the scene and does gym launch from like 0 to 100 in 12 months. And I'm like, what am I even doing? Why am I even trying? That kind of humor and that joking is actually really my mentality, is also like self-depreciating, not actually putting down or being insecure about whatever I've accomplished, but also recognizing like that's absolutely insane. It's a different degree of greatness, a different degree of mastery. Of course, how we define success is so multifaceted, but game recognized game. So if someone's truly getting provable and verifiable results in business, the biggest losing strategy that people can have is to critique that. I find it so shocking. What's also funny is that people really do. They try to like, maybe they'll amplify someone's style. I don't like their style. I don't like they're too braggy on social media. They're too this. I've learned the art of eating the meat and throwing out the bones. If there's something to learn from the person. And by the way, it's like, why would you want to learn how to get in shape from the overweight fitness coach? Why would you want to learn how to build a successful business from someone who's only done it in theory or not in the actual real world, or doesn't have extraordinary results? So I guess the final thing I would say is Simon Sinek kind of coined this concept of having worthy rivals. So there's this whole thing of comparison is the thief of joy and it's the killer of creativity, and that's true. But I actually think that true greats and real leaders, they find a place where if comparison is leading you to insecurity, you should block and unfollow the person for a season maybe. But where you really have a superpower is if comparison is challenging you to be better. So positive comparison is having worthy rivals that when somebody shows up, it doesn't make you insecure or jealous. They show up and they're doing better than you. It challenges you to step up your game. It identifies that maybe you've gotten a little complacent. Maybe you're a little too comfortable. Maybe you should. So therefore, I'm grateful when maybe somebody brings something innovative to YouTube, they start doing better. And I don't think about putting that person's success down. My question is, how can I learn from them? How can I observe what they're doing? How can I see what they're doing? And to honor and respect them. I've tried to also articulate that on Twitter, in person, at events, going up to who would be a competitor I should be jealous of. I try to flip it and go honor them and articulate and say, man, I love what you're doing. I respect what you're doing. It's incredible. You're bringing true innovation to the game, and I love it. I'm learning from you. I'm taking notes. I'm studying. And that is what's been helpful to me. It has challenged me to be better, and that perspective has served me.
It's a really great, healthy mindset around comparison and jealousy. But I do want to name. I want a name of somebody that you are jealous of on YouTube, or maybe a business owner. Maybe that counts.
I think that people I've been jealous of, one is I'm getting smarter now as it pertains to like the work you mentioned earlier, like the awareness of taking more time off in the last 18 years. So our theme this year for Think Media is built to last. And what I mean by the work is obviously on Instagram, I'm the rise and grind guy. People mistake it. It means rise and brew your coffee. I guess it also means like grind, but people always critique grind. They're like, why would you want to grind? You know, gears grinding together, that's like bad. I'm like, dude, relax. Oh, it's toxic hustle culture. I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. Like grind your coffee beans and get to work. But I always have a second or two of jealousy when I talk to a business owner who has optimized their business in such a way that they've like created total freedom. And the reason it's like attention is it's self-awareness, because I actually love what I do. I love being here. I love being with you. I love making content. There's times when, you know, the margin can probably be cranked up or a little bit of the rest. But I remember like I was on a ski trip with Nick. I'm actually forgetting this gentleman's name. It was Nick from Grayscale Gorilla. This guy was the original, I want to say he was the founder of Red Giant, which is a software company that does plugins, all these different cool 3D plugins. And by the way, to the point of learning from worthy rivals, this conversation and this trip changed my life. So this guy, and I'm sorry I forget his name, and Nick are skiing, I'm snowboarding, we're in Colorado. And he's asking me about my business. Now at the time too, I was like very much a solo. This might've been 2016, not solo, but like in pertaining to content, there was no like Nolan or Omar making videos. So I'm really the engine of creating videos. Maybe we had editing help, but I'm still probably editing a lot. And so I'm pushing 50, 60, 70 hour weeks. There's an analogy in personal brands called the dancing bear. And that is, you don't actually really have a real business if you're the dancing bear. And if you stop dancing, the money stops coming in. This is a lot of trap that a lot of content creators are in. Like if you stop producing content, it stops. The brand deal stops. So this is where you ask the question of, can I build a real business? So I'm the dancing bear. Like I got to be on camera and I got to keep dancing and I got to keep editing videos. And then maybe we create an online course, but nevertheless, got to keep promoting it, got to keep hustling. And those are the nature of operating a business. But we're having some early success in Think Media. So I'm kind of getting accolades, getting seen, getting viewed, getting invited a few places. And I described all of that to this gentleman, founder of Red Giant, on the chairlift. And he looks at me and he goes, man, that sounds awful. He's like, that sounds like the worst. And and I was like, yeah, I'm in videos and I'm in a couple videos. I'm doing social media content. He's like, boy, that sucks, bro. Like, I'm really sorry to hear that. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, I would hate like being on camera and being public and like making content all the time. And he was like, I was like, okay. And then he was like, what's interesting is even though I founded this company, the current staff and everybody there, they don't even know who I am. He's like, there's actually now a different CEO. And he goes, I spend most of my time now, like this last week, I was building shelves for my 6-year-old daughter's classroom in her school. I'm out here skiing with you guys. Like, I don't got to do anywhere. I got to be anywhere. I'm independently wealthy and I have like no worries. And like Red Giant's growing more without me there than it was when I was there. And my whole paradigm was actually really stretched kind of in that moment. Now, what's interesting is it's a self-awareness thing, because honestly, if I had nothing to do in relation to operating Think, that isn't my core desire. I'm trying to find that balance of, I do want to be off work at 5, home with the family. I do want to architect maybe how many weeks off or vacations and experiences, this company has been built around a passion and a mission and purpose. So I think it's even important to do the math for the listener. Like, think about the math for your life. Like, do you want to work 60, 70, or 80? There's some people who are driven by madness, not in a negative way, that they actually enjoy that. I think about one of my mentors, Patrick Bet-David. That's where I just talked to him. I was like, so how many hours a week are you putting in? I said 80. He goes, no question. Right? No question. No, like, and loves to do it. And somehow gets his family to church on Sunday and other people from Valuetainment and making memories with his kids. And I mean, work is maybe he bought like part of the New York Yankees. So like fly to New York, bring your kids, meet with some business people, whatever. Well, I don't want to work 80. But then the flip side is like, were you trying to work 10? Nah, I'd be super bored. I don't want to work 10. So I think it's kind of trying to figure it out. So anyways, long answer to the jealousy question is, when someone is just so smart that like the thing they've built has produced a lot of wisdom, you almost can make that biblical, where I think if you're working too much, it does affect your attitude. It happened to Mary and Martha. And Mary was like chilling with Jesus, and Martha was like pissed that Mary was like just hanging out, and Martha was cleaning the house and like cooking. And like, Jesus, don't you see all the stuff that I'm doing? Like, there are a lot of principles you could have from that story, but I think one of the stories is that if you're unrested, tired eyes rarely see a bright future. You start being short, you start being more mean, you start having a shorter fuse, a shorter temper. And so sometimes maybe after I've been hustling, I'll meet somebody that has insane efficiency or lifestyle built into their business. And when I'm in a fatigued state, that's probably when the emotion of jealousy arises the most. Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week, which is kind of a marketing title, but nevertheless, he built that business to be super efficient. I'll be like, with 4-Hour Work Week, that's insane. And if that's offending you, you probably need a nap. You probably need a break. And that's probably true about me.
All right. Without naming names, have you ever had a collaboration that has gone wrong?
Yeah. I mean, there's people that we've collaborated with that are in jail right now. So that went wrong. And we didn't obviously know the different situations. That's an extreme one. I think luckily, here's a big lesson. The lesson of 2022 for me was to slow down and be very thoughtful about who we partner or collaborate with. So without really naming names, that situation was somebody in a company that we partnered with in relation to our event Growth Video Live. Here's the big mistake. One, I had built trust with this person because they had attended our church for a couple of years. Lesson is, just because someone's at church or whatever doesn't mean that they are trustworthy or that they can't be duplicitous. One of my favorite books right now is Trust by Dr. Henry Cloud. And it talks about track record being one of the attributes of trust. But here's the problem. Bernie Madoff had a good track record. He built that Ponzi scheme, I want to say, for over a decade. So what's so wild about that is word of mouth, friend of a friend could endorse a person who has had a track record of 5, 10 years even, and that person could still turn out to be evil. So some of that could be stuff that's happening in life. But here was my mistake. I did not involve you. I did not involve Sonia in even the Genesis meeting with this person. And it was like, it kind of got a little weird. It was just going to be kind of a sort of collab, kind of a sponsor of the event. It wasn't a partnership. Collab is a better word. Nevertheless, that was a massive lesson and a failure and mistake of mine to realize that if we're going to enter into a relationship, a collaboration, a partnership, and defining maybe the different degrees of that it was hasty for me or just a blind spot of mine to not involve trusted individuals with different perspectives on the team. And then there was another social media influencer who was under investigation, who perhaps had the FTC looking into them and had a lot of stuff happening. And I talked with my friend Caleb Ralston, who works for Gary Vaynerchuk and works for Alex Hormozy now. And this conversation reinforced the theme of the year. There's about 2 other scenarios, but this also reinforced. And he said, we're being very thoughtful about who we co-sign. It's one of the things he learned from Gary V. One of the things, Alex and Layla, being very thoughtful with who we co-sign, who we partner with. And then we started talking about degrees, because we'll maybe have people be like, it's one thing if you're interviewed on somebody else's show, it's a chance to influence. It's one thing if they're interviewed on your show. One thing if they're vendors, if they're partners, if they're sponsors. Really good topic to bring up and a huge lesson that I've learned. So enough happened in 2022 that I see sometimes God speaks to me. I really sense this, or I've tracked it in my history. It even talks about in the Old Testament that God speaks in dreams, visions. He speaks through his word. He speaks in different ways to different people. This sounds weird, but God really does speak to me in threes. Like sometimes I'll be reading in the Bible. I will read a book later and that exact principle will be established there. And then on the news, there'll be a news story about like a CEO that went through, and I'll be like, dude, that was insane. And it'll all be in the same day. And I'll be like, whoa, God, you really speak in mysterious ways. And you are speaking. And I'll see those types of things. Well, again, these are just general wisdom lessons. The cynic would be like, well, you should just learn from your mistakes. And I'll be like, yeah, but this was like a year where like God was like, hey, be careful who you partner with and do your due diligence. My wife, Sonia, has really got a gift of discernment. So do you, and the team directors and other people have different vantage points. And really collectively together, here's the thing, we could all still be tricked by a Bernie Madoff, but we're going to increase our longevity and our chances of not making a major mistake by slowing down, doing our research, getting a second opinion, or even just, not rushing into something, by myself and just getting other stakeholders and decision makers involved. So I will say this, Sonia and I interpret history different, which is our right to do. So like she looks back and she's like, if you would have listened to me, and she's right. If you would have listened to me, we could have avoided this. And for me, I always say, I'm like, well, once the train left the station, we had this partnership was going and people were already involved and all this information didn't come out till I want to say a month or two after the event in the Grow Up Video Live situation. But nevertheless, I go, well, you're right, of course. Like if we could change it, we should have. But to me, it was a lesson that we could learn from. I don't know if it's that I would regret. It was that I feel like we're given an opportunity with how we're building the company. And our theme this year is built to last. Is this whole idea of be careful how you build. God's grace has protected us in certain situations in the past and in the future. There's also times where like we need wisdom and we need discernment and haste makes mistakes. We want to walk calculated. We want to be careful. And so that's definitely something that I've wanted to apply moving forward that I really learned in 2022.
Our community will often send us emails of like the people hitting them up in the DMs like, hey, buy my product and then I'll sponsor you, or these different, what I would say are scams.
Yeah.
So have you ever especially at the beginning of your journey?
I have never sent money to a Nigerian prince. I've been tempted to because I was offered, there was $1 million of an unclaimed inheritance for like a Nigerian king. and he needed somebody to give the money to. And so his representative emailed me, and all he needed was my bank account number, social security number, and PIN number.
What an opportunity.
I know. And he was going to transfer the money. I got close. I think my history as the director of communications at a church, as a digital immigrant, being on the internet and social media, has been helpful in the sense of spotting scams. So I've never sent money to a Nigerian prince. I've gotten emails that have been, phishing malware. I really don't think I click on them too much. I actually do have some stories. I got called by the IRS. That's a good one. This is the IRS. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh, it's a scam. And so as scammers are getting more sophisticated, and my heart goes out to people, because especially people that are maybe a little bit older, a little bit more naive. I mean, crypto scams all over the Instagram comments, YouTube comments. Just this whole idea of like, send me money on the internet. No, I've never fallen into that. And with the brand deal stuff, I've gone pretty far down the road. Like, oh my gosh, they think I'm so like cool and fashionable that they want to send me sunglasses, and sponsor me. I just have to like pay for them. So I'm talking, it's really just like, maybe it's not a scam. It's just sales. They're like, I mean, it is, but it's like, yeah, the way to get, influencers to buy your sunglasses is to just sell it to them in the DMs, making them think they're being sponsored by paying for it. But there's a couple things that happened to me. Once I installed TeamViewer of some kind of app like that on my computer, and that got hacked, which allowed the person who logged in, it was so that Microsoft could like fix something by taking over my desktop. Well, a hacker hacked it, took over my desktop, and went to like eBay and some places where my credit card information was saved, and mailed themselves about $1,600 worth of gift cards from various websites that were already logged into. And I remember I woke up in the morning curious about what was happening on my desktop, and then I went to the history and realized that all this activity was happening between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. And I'm like, I figured Sonia probably wasn't up on my computer. And so luckily fraud and credit cards, fraud protection refunded all the money and shut all that down. Of course, there was the time when the Think Media podcast channel got hacked. That was very significant. And that was probably browser hijacking, cookie hijacking. That's the whole nature of your YouTube channel being managed by multiple people. And I would recommend listeners check out a link in the show notes or watch that episode. I think there's 1 or 2 episodes. We had a special guest who's an expert in protecting yourself. So I think there's that one. I've invested in some business experiments that have lost $7,000 here and there. And I think the big key there was I was going into it knowing I could lose the money. I think that's important, and it was a calculated risk. But generally, I'm pretty grateful that I've avoided being full-on scammed for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Definitely putting yourself out there on the internet might creates a target for people to do that. But you mentioned having the self-awareness to sometimes know yeah, I'm not really a fashion influencer, so that's probably not like a legit brand deal someone's offering me right now.
Yes.
If you liked this episode, then make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this episode with other people who could find it valuable. And just as a reminder, we have our Think Media sale going on right now. You can find it at thinkmediasale.com. It's our viral video bundle, incredible selection of courses. We'll have that all linked up for you in the show notes, and we'll see you on the next one.